We have a couple folks that are on the way, so we're just delaying a minute or two, and then we'll get underway in just a moment. Okay, we'll call to order the Committee of the Whole. This is a meeting where we consider the first shot at the budget for 2026. And we have everybody present with the exception of a couple of members who are on their way or otherwise excused. This is a fairly informal, it's a committee meeting. And the idea today is we're going to hear from the administrator with an overview of our budget. Then we're going to hear from all 21 department heads later with personal presentations on their departments. Then we'll break for lunch, hopefully about 11:30 or so, no later then. And then we'll talk about priorities after lunch. And hopefully we'll get out of here by, the goal is 1 o'clock. But if we don't want to stop anybody from asking questions, encourage that, and don't want to limit anybody in their presentations, please give fulsome presentations. One thing we're going to have today that is a little bit unique, as a result of actions this board took earlier in the year, this particular Committee of the Whole will also be the opportunity for us to hear the annual reports of all the departments, because we moved that up to this session so that the board, sitting as a Committee of the Whole, could hear the reports of all the departments prior to the time we start to act on the budget. So what that means is they'll be a little bit longer today as their presentations include their annual reports, but we won't be hearing annual reports at future board meetings. So future board meetings will be shorter. So it's a little bit of a trade-off. I'm going to give just a very quick summary of some of the things we might want to consider as we, from a big picture, and then Ken will give an even bigger picture of this. But here's where we sit, roughly. We're going to have about, as best we can project, $1.2 million in new revenues for next year to deal with. We're going to have about $1.2 million in new expenses to deal with if we were to provide a step increase for all the county staff and take care of health insurance. They're an exact match, practically. Now, things change. We're going to hear from, as I said, 21 departments today, 13 of which, more or less, will have no additional requests. So for them, it's a fairly straightforward presentation today. We can always ask questions. But then there's the remaining 8 departments that do have requests, a couple of which are multiple. If we were to give the step increase and health insurance based on our current projections for revenue, that expends all money. As we get more money in, which we might get, so for example, we passed a resolution as a board not too long ago asking the state to consider giving us more of a share of the monies that are generated by the judiciary within the county. And also the WCA has asked for $70 million from the legislative branch for the judiciary. That would mean about a $500,000 increase for our county if that happened. The problem is that the state legislature, as Supervisor Telejohn stated the other night when we met, they may or may not have their budget done in time in June or July. It might be a fall budget, or there may not even be a budget. So hence there's a lot of uncertainty around what we're doing. So we'll hear the presentations over the first 2.5 hours or so, break, and then that last hour is when we'll have the opportunity to set the priorities if we decide to do just a step increase and the health care, which expends all the money we know is coming in. What would our priorities be for any additional monies that come in the future? So that's kind of the broad picture of where we're going. And so with that, I'll turn it over to our administrator, Mr. Witt. Oh, I'm sorry. I got ahead of that. Are there any corrections to our previous meeting's minutes? Seeing none, they're approved. Public comment. Seeing no public comment, we will turn to our administrator, Mr. Witt.
All righty. So I'm going to go over the PowerPoint that's in the packet. Then when we do the department reports, the last document in the packet with the budget priorities, that's the order that all the departments will go in. So if you're following along and scoring at home, you can look at that information. So thank you everyone for joining us today here on National Burrito Day. It's a real thing. It's also the start of our budget process. So here, April 3rd, 2025, we're going to start the 2026 budget. So basically, the timeline between now and November is there's a parallel budget process for the capital improvements. Today, we're really focusing, though, on the operating budget. So we're going to establish some budget priorities. We'll bring that back to the admin committee in April, and then the May County Board. And that's when the budget priorities then will be set that we'll give to the staff, directing them where the prioritization is. And as Vice Chair Fiedler was saying, the priorities help me and help the departments determine if new monies become available, how we're going to use them. So yes, we may not have the money for an individual item today, but maybe in June, maybe in August, those monies do become available, and we're able to do something then further down on the list. So once we approve those budget priorities, the department heads all start submitting their budgets in the month of June, July. Then we sit down, we start meeting with the departments, going over it in detail, so I can become familiar with what their requests are in August. I come back to the standing committees in September and go over some of those details at the committee level so that you have some additional input at that time before final decisions are made. I come back in October to the Committee of the Whole, and I present to you then a balanced budget. It will be a balanced budget. I'll make determinations based upon your budget priorities that we're going to start working on today to come to that balanced budget, and then public hearing in November and final approval. So that's the process. So let's go. All right. So our revenues. So the county operates on about $135 million of revenues. 34% of that is from property taxes. So there's a lot of other sources of revenues that we come in with, but property taxes are generally the one that gets the biggest headlines. So where our revenue sources I predict to increase are net new construction. Over the last 5 years, we've averaged about 2.5%, which would generate $850,000 of net new construction. We have some new leases with the Department of Corrections, USDA, and with the on-site clinic. Those are new revenue sources coming into the county. So that'll be about $150,000 that was not in the 2025 budget. Sales tax, I'm estimating anywhere from 0 to 200,000. And so we finished 2024 right at where we're budgeted for 2025. So we will get later this summer, early fall, revised estimate of sales tax from the state, but I'm just cautioning you, there's probably not a lot there. So that puts us $1 million to $1.2 million of new revenues. So that's what we're looking at out of $135 million, about $1.2 million maybe in new revenue sources. Our expenses match the revenues, $135 million. Salaries and benefits, they make up half of our expenses. And so when we look at any increases driving it, that half generally is a cost driver for us because we are a service organization. So wages and benefits. If we look at compensation, there's three things that I kind of look at. A step increase, which would be about a 2.5% average increase for most employees, would cost us $750,000. A 1% COLA, so either in addition or in lieu of a step increase, is about $300,000. So you can multiply that out. If you wanted a 5%, that's $1.5 million. The union contract in 2026 will cost us about $250,000. Those are sunk costs. That's already approved by the county board, so those costs will happen. When we look at health insurance then, so 1% is 120,000, 10%, 1.2 million. So it's going to fall somewhere on that spectrum. I don't know yet where that's going to be. We've done a lot of things with our health insurance in order to help keep that down, to keep that on the lower end. So I'm hopeful for that. But really my best guess right now is the county board would want to provide a step increase for the employees. We've done one every year since 2016. I don't see a reason to break that trend. The union contract, which you've already agreed to, and a very modest 2% increase in health insurance puts us at $1,240,000. So right about where my revenue expectation is. So that pretty much wraps it up for today. Yeah. So, I mean, but that's where I talked about, I think we have projected revenues, we have projected expenses. They're kind of at a match right now, as Vice Chair Fiedler was talking about. But we don't know what else may change, what other revenue sources might come in. So we will go through all the other requests by the departments, because there's likely to be something that we're able to do. I just really have no idea, standing here on April 3rd, what those might be yet. All right, so just a couple of facts about the county and the county's budget. We're at 665 employees. You can see over the past decade how that's grown by about 100 employees. And that's reflective of the growing county. So as the county is growing, the service demands have grown, and we've added additional staff to accommodate that. The equalized value of the county, you can see that going up. You can see the housing market crash back in 2012. The subset graph there is our net new construction, sort of goes up and down. That last 5-year average, though, is about 2.5%. The mill rate of the county, this is the tax rate divided by the value of the county. You can see that continues to go down. This goes all the way back to 1975. I wasn't tracking it before then, so I'm not responsible for that data. The trend, though, really since about 2011-12 has been straight down. I don't think we've had an increase year in over a decade. So that's good news for the taxpayers. And really then you ask, well, how do we compare across the state? Out of all the other 72 counties, we have the 8th lowest mill rate out of all the 72 counties. We're $1.87 lower than the state average, 38% lower than the state average. So the county board has historically done a very good job and put us right at the top or the bottom of that list per se. And then even if you look at it on a per capita basis, you know, based upon how many people we have here, we're still below the average. We're 18th. We're actually the 18th largest county, and we're the 18th lowest tax rate per capita, so they kind of match. But we're $377 on average per person lower than the state. So St. Croix County is a good place to be from a tax perspective. All right, so with all of that, sort of sets the stage for us. We'll now go into the annual department reports, unless you had any questions on the bigger picture. No? All right. All right, so first up is going to be the circuit court system and register and probate. It could be you, Rebecca? All right, very good.
Hi Supervisors, good morning. I'm Rebecca, the Register and Probate and Clerk of Juvenile Court. You have heard from me relatively recently. We did our annual department reports back in December, so I will be very brief. My last report carried us through October, and I finished out the year, and we were able to stick to our budget. We were within $5,000 of what we had planned. It took a little bit of arranging of our costs, specifically with our law clerk, which is a priority for us. And here to address our concern and need for that is Judge Nordstrand.
Hello, everybody. Do you have those paddles still? Yes and no? When I was on the county board, so I'm here today to try to get as many yeses as possible, I suppose. But I want to talk about a law clerk. We have a law clerk. She's leaving us now to take a full-time job elsewhere. Generally, our law clerk that assists the circuit court judges has been somebody from law school, just graduated, taken the bar. They tend to stay for a fairly short period of time, and off they go. And of course, that means that probably their utility depends on the person. And sometimes you're very successful, as we have been with our current clerk, and sometimes maybe not as good. But the actual law clerk position is required by, and I say required in quotes, sort of recommended by the Supreme Court rules, that each branch of the circuit court should be staffed by one full-time law clerk. That's what Rule 68 says. And we've never had one for each branch. There's 4 branches here. We've had a part-time law clerk largely, and the assistance of our court commissioner, Commissioner Heckman, has done law clerking duties for us for many years. His job has changed. As our county has grown and our caseload has grown and the number of judges has not, he's taking on a lot more responsibilities in terms of the day-to-day operation of particularly the criminal functions as well as small claims and other things like injunction hearings for restraining orders and that kind of thing. But a real big role now is he does a lot of the preliminary hearings in felony cases for circuit courts so that we don't need to do them and we can be working on other things. And so his ability to assist us in law clerking functions, which is like helping us write complicated decisions, doing research so that we can write the complicated decisions. We are really, that's our only resource, along with Jane, as I said, who's now leaving us. But with the Commissioner's decline of availability, we think it's appropriate to ask the County Board for one full-time law clerk who would actually be a lawyer, had passed the bar, and hopefully stay with us over a period of time. Now, that's a big ask, I get that, because you're basically saying you're going to have to hire somebody who's probably making what a new assistant district attorney or public defender or assistant corp counsel might make, because full-time job, pass the bar, benefits and all of that. But I think we're to the point where we need to consider that, at least as a possibility. We have some money in our budget for law clerk now that's being used for the part-time position that we've had, and so it's not a complete ask, but I don't have the numbers in front of me. I know Ken probably knows them in his head, but in any case, we all know what one position would cost in general, and so that's our ask. That's really the only thing I wanted to come and talk to you about. If you've got questions about that, I'd be happy to answer.
Thank you, Judge. Just so I'm clear, you said the current position is leaving, and you're going to replace that person, and then you're asking for another one, or I was not clear on that.
So
Thank
we
you.
have enough money for a part-time law clerk, and I think that number has varied slightly from year to year depending on other needs. Is that right, Ken?
Yeah, the difference is about the 10,000 they have budgeted for part-time, you know, basically a student, somebody that hasn't passed the bar yet, to a full-time position, which would be, you know, $100,000 swing.
So that's the difference, and it's basically recognizing the commissioner's change in role. And the reality is, we have to have the commissioner doing what he's doing. So there's really, the options are we continue with a part-time clerk doing what they can with the money that we have, or we do something different to add to the ability for a law clerk, because we're not going to be able to have the commissioner go back to law clerking half-time. It's just not in the cards anymore, given our caseload.
Thank you very much, and you'll get the green side of the paddle from me.
Oh, well, that's one. Okay, I appreciate it. Any other questions? All right, well, thank you.
Thank you, Judge.
Very good. Christy, you are up next, Clerk of Courts. And you can use the mouse up there to scroll down to your report.
I will do that. Good morning, everybody. Let's see here. I'm sure there's a faster way. All right. So I guess probably my main ask is going to be what it has been the past few years, and that's on mandated services that the court has to provide. Most specifically would be, number one would be interpreters. I love my interpreters, but they are expensive. We more than doubled from 2023 to 2024 and what we needed for interpreters. And we do get some reimbursement from the state. I even got emergency funds for a trial that cost us about $15,000, and we got just less than $7,000 to cover our costs. But that is continuing to grow. I know as of right now, we have over 245 cases that need an interpreter in the next several months. So our Spanish interpreter is here almost every day for extended periods of time, meeting with multiple defendants with multiple cases. The other mandated services that we have are our court-appointed attorneys. I believe that increase was about 21% over last year. Again, anyone who can't afford an attorney the court is mandated to provide attorney services for those individuals, as well as asking guardian ad litems, mediation fees, psychological exams, all things that are court ordered that the county has to pay for as they come up. So there is, as Ken and the judge stated, there is an ask to the state legislator to increase court funding, $70 million for next year. Again, we have no idea if that will pass or not. It would mean a substantial increase for us, but it still probably would not cover all of our expenses. So if anyone has any questions, I'd be happy to answer them.
Supervisor Bernie.
Your Spanish interpreter is here almost daily. Are they outside? Like, are they contracted outside so they come in as a contracted service?
Yes.
Have you guys, I don't want to assume, so I'm going to ask, have you looked at what it would cost to bring someone in as a part-time employee or a full-time employee compared to contracting that out since they're here every day?
We have not had the opportunity yet to explore that option. So we
I mean,
perhaps
I
can
think
add in the future.
Yeah, if we're having them in every day, though, I mean, that can't be, I don't know a foreign language. I know Pig Latin. My kids figured that out really quick, though, so
All right.
we had to switch back to English. But, so I don't know. I think that's something we should look at if we're increasing this, and I'm sure you're keeping an eye on it, but I just, thinking.
Yep, it's something that we can explore. Any other questions? Thank you.
Thank you, Christy.
All right, Tina Forrest, medical examiner. There she is. She's behind Todd. I couldn't see her.
That's pretty common.
And maybe I could just add one point before Tina gets going. If there are questions, and if we're not getting a flood of questions all at one time, I would just suggest just ask the question directly to our presenter. You don't have to go through me. If we're getting many questions at one time, we'll try to sort it out. But if we're just getting one at a time, just ask the question. Is that so? They'll ask directly, Tina.
Well, hello, everybody. First, let me introduce myself for those of you who have not met me. My name is Tina Forrest. I recently took over the Chief Medical Examiner position upon Patty Schachner's retirement. This is my second day on the job. So I guess you could say I'm relatively new. So most of what I'm going to talk to you about today is kind of what is echoing what Patty had prepared. So we're facing an enormous increase in our caseload. At this time last year, we had 180 cases. This year, we're at about 344. You can attribute that to, increasing population. with the growth of the county. You can also attribute it to the aging population. And as those things increase, our needs also increase. We're looking at decedents who have an increase in weight. So in order to ensure the safety of my staff, we need a second striker cot. We need something that's automated instead of using the Inferno cots. I don't know if a lot of you realize this. Once we leave the scene, we are independent. It is one person moving possibly a 350-pound individual. That striker cot assists in raising and lowering that person. And that's very important. I don't want my staff, we're already a small office. I don't need a workplace injury, and certainly you guys don't either. So that's one ask. In addition to the rising caseloads, we're having more hazardous scene responses. And this involves significant exposure to biohazards and bodily fluids. And that's not only on scene, that's after we get back to the office when we are properly processing and respectfully processing. So a need for biohazard disposal is imminent. We also have a surge in domestic violence deaths. We've had 3 homicides already this year in St. Croix County. So that just speaks to the increase there. And then elder abuse allegations, along with the increasing aging population, you also have an increase in abuse allegations. And those cause us to prepare meticulous case reviews and documentation. So as the need grows and as the population grows, if we're looking towards the future, we need 2 more full-time investigators. Currently, we're working with 3 right now. I have 2 open positions. They are contract positions at this time. With the evolving caseload, it would be beneficial for our office, and it's a need that we have 2 full-time investigators fully staffed to assist in the needs of the office. And those are our 2 major asks. So any questions? You all are taking it easy on me? Yes, sir.
With the addition of the, you're saying that you're up over 300 so far this year? Mm-hmm. So with that in mind, do you have how are you standing with like refrigeration space and other necessities that are there to make sure that we're able to operate efficiently?
Absolutely. So currently we have 2 refrigerators or coolers that can hold, if we're maxed out, I would say 6 to 9 individuals. Our racking system can be reconfigured and needs to be reconfigured. Luckily, in St. Croix County, we don't run into a lot of issues of estrangement at this point. So when we do have to bring loved ones back to the office, they are released relatively quickly. We have run into a couple instances of unclaimed. And in the homicide cases as well, we don't like to cremate until things have been adjudicated. So, we're holding them at our facility until that process takes place, and that takes up space as well. So the spaces of our building could be expanded and will likely need to be expanded in the future. The immediate needs, though, are to keep my staff safe and to keep us fully staffed. But that will be an issue in the future, I'm sure.
One question for you. You said you have 2 positions that are contracted right now. How long have they been contracted services?
Jeff and Jason, Jeff has been around longer than I've been here, and Jason as well. We do have a third, Brooke, is a third contracted deputy medical examiner at this point. We are looking to move towards a different per diem and a different wage with these two new that are coming on, but they're also still remain contract. So, and with the amount of hours that our contract workers are working, they're getting to that point that we need to start looking at full-time.
Just if I could go back to that one and clarify a little bit more first. Okay. If you could scroll back to your organizational structure. Yeah. So the organizational structure is a full-time medical examiner, which just started April 1 of 2025. And then we have a part-time program coordinator budgeted at 0.5 FTE. And then all the other investigators are part-time, basically on-call investigators in order to fill, 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. So that's the current organizational structure for staffing. And then the CT technologist is a person that comes in to run the CT as needed for those scans.
So how does this change what we just did from the admin committee perspective and then the county board perspective, where we changed the per diem and how we compensate for 2026? Do the two that we have that are contracted, are we looking at moving them into these full-time positions? And the ask that you have here for an additional 160, is that an additional 160, or is that to make these folks full-time then?
I think that's for an additional 160 is what Patty was referencing. I think it's important that we keep our per diem and our on-call to cover that 24/7. It's very difficult to run a full-time department 24/7 with limited staff. These individuals that are contract are working 12-hour shifts at night. They're working full weekends on call. And the stress load is there, and it's increasing. We work a very traumatic job. And we need time to decompress, and with a small department, it's difficult. So I think the addition of 2 additional full-time investigators would help cut that.
And to further clarify, because maybe the rest of the board doesn't know some of the changes that we made at the admin. So we changed how we pay the on-call medical examiners, the part-time on-call ones. So they were paid on a case basis, so they'd be paid $75 every time they responded, and they would have, I think it was $3.50 an hourly rate for every hour they were on call. So that was basically how they got compensated. So we changed that to, we increased the on-call, but then we changed it to an hourly rate. So if you're there for 1 hour, you get 1 hour of pay, and if you're there for 5 hours, you get 5 hours, instead of a flat $75. So we changed that organizational structure of compensation to be more consistent with how other counties and communities do it. The 2 existing that we have them grandfathered for the rest of the year, but they'll go to that hourly rate starting in 2026. So all of the part-time medical examiners will be on that new rate starting in 2026. The $160,000 then is to upgrade those to full-time. So it'd be an additional 160 to answer the question, Supervisor Burning.
Question for Ken. Question for Ken, the striker system, and you had mentioned biohazard, is that in our KIP somewhere now?
Yeah, the striker, if it's under 5,000, actually wouldn't qualify for a KIP. It's just going to be an operating expense. The biohazard, we don't have a price estimate on that yet, but I'm guessing that's probably only a few hundred a month. That's just going to be an operating expense. And really, Tina's brand new. Those are really small items. She doesn't know my magic tricks yet, nothing up my sleeve. So those are things that, we're going to be able to take care of without having to get full county board approval on and go through all the rigmarole.
Tina, question for you. the sharp increase in cases, is it suicides, is it overdoses, is it natural deaths?
At this point, the majority are natural. You know, obviously, there's been the sharp increase in homicides, which hopefully does not continue at the rate it is. Another reason for the increase is our out-of-state cremations that are coming in. So per the state statute, the cremation authorization has to originate from the county where disposition will be taking place. So we have a number of individuals that pass away in Minnesota, but they are bogged down. So they are sending the remains over to St. Croix County's crematoriums to be cremated. So that requires me to create a case, look into that case, make sure that I'm able to cremate and it's not a homicide, something of that nature, and then approve that cremation.
Follow-up is, have you seen this sharp increase year over year, or the last 2-3 years, or is it just like a?
It's been a steady increase over the last couple of years, but the out-of-state cremations, you know, just to give you a little bit of a, in the last 2 days, I've signed 15. So that's, you know, 15 extra cases that I've had to investigate without eyes on an actual individual, just going off paper, double checking to make sure everything's correct before it's completed. But we have had 9 additional scene investigations from at this time last year, which is quite big,
Yeah.
quite large.
Can you deny the out-of-state cremations and just not take them?
Unfortunately not, because the statute reads that it has to originate from here. I mean, I could, you know, I suppose we could, but that would be the funeral homes that would have to deny them bringing them over, I guess. I'd have to look into that, and I can get back to you. Sure.
A comment maybe. Why don't we charge Minnesota a lot more money? I don't know what that dollar value is, but it sure makes sense.
At this point, I don't invoice for those out-of-state cremations. We don't want to be charging the loved ones double because they had to cross a state line to be cremated over here. So we don't invoice for that. Mm-hmm.
So that when they bring them over to cremate them, are they St. Croix County residents that died in Minnesota and they're bringing them back? Or are they Minnesota residents?
It can be both. So it depends. It could be a Minnesota resident whose family resides in Wisconsin, or it could be a Wisconsin resident who passed away at a hospital, or other place of residence in Minnesota. So
I know you guys don't invoice for that, and I know it's because they've already been charged in Minnesota for
correct.
it. But if they don't have any connection to St. Croix County, we're subsidizing.
yeah.
I have a question. I have a question.
Supervisor Carlson?
Yeah. So if we hire 2 full-time employees, we'll still keep it in the budget to pay for the contract? I just want to make it clear, or will the contract employees be ended?
So would the contract employees assume those full-time positions and keep the staff of 5 is your question, correct? Or,
Is it going to be 2 full-time employees plus the contract still available, or are the contract, okay.
yes, that's what our office and what our department would prefer in order to keep up with the increasing caseload.
Thank you.
A question, does it make more sense to hire 2 people full-time or to just hire 2 more contract workers? What's the difference if you look at the cost of,
Sure.
all of the tax business and all of that?
Well, retention-wise, I think it would be easier to keep full-time employees that would be receiving benefits. If we are adding more simple contract, that's going to lessen, the amount that they're on call. Are they going to want to work and put their weekends and their lives on hold for not a lot of money and in a very demanding job that not a lot of people can do. We're a very specialized field. We deal with a lot of death, a lot of trauma, a lot of really icky situations.
One more question. So if you hired 2 full-time people, would we be hiring the contract people less? I mean, if they're not demanded, if their presence isn't demanded, do they just stay home? Is that how that works with this contract, or how is it?
Yeah. So the contract, they're scheduled at this point, 12-hour shifts is how they work it. And amongst ourselves, if somebody needs time off, we just contact somebody else, and then that person is on call for that 12-hour shift. So these 2 full-time would mitigate some of those hours and lessen the hours of the contracts.
We got more?
My only question has to do with the training for your staff. Is any additional training included in this budget? And I'll tell you where I'm coming from. Last September, my family experienced a trauma, so we've seen firsthand.
Could you
and
speak
Brooke
up,
was our
please?
investigator. And, I'm sorry. Oh,
No, you just got to get it closer.
I got to get closer. And the care that she used with my children was immeasurable. So I'm speaking kind of to a qualitative element that can also speak to a budget request. Is there anything additional that you need in terms of training and support for your staff? You talked about the trauma that they experienced.
Absolutely. As far as training goes, one of the items that I would like to push for the department is that all my investigators moving forward receive certification through the American Board of Medical Legal Death Investigators. So this is a certification that you have to work a certain number of hours and have a certain number of scenes, and then it's a test that you would take in order to pass and be certified. There is, a yearly charge for that, and then recertification comes every 5 years. But that test does involve coping mechanisms to make sure that you know how to take care of yourself in these stressful situations, to lessen, the traumatic response, as well as, I want my investigators, when they go out on scene, to know exactly what they're doing so that law enforcement feels comfortable in allowing us to process the scene and help them as much as they can. I think a common misconception is we're just there to pick up the body, and that's not all we do. I'm doing a very detailed assessment on scene. I'm interviewing family, I'm coming up with a background, and trying to help myself recognize what the difference could be between an accidental or a natural death, which is legally binding. So it's a very stressful and strained process that takes a lot of detail. So having these investigators AMD certified, I think would make families feel more comfortable that they're getting the best care that they need. And currently, I'm working on an onboarding process for the new investigators as well. So that will be very thorough so that when they go out on scenes by themselves for the first time, they know what they're doing. So that's all in place and will be moving forward.
All right, very good. We had a griller on our first week.
Yeah, thanks, guys.
Thank you and
Nice
welcome
to meet you
aboard.
all. I appreciate it. Thank you.
All right, next up is Dr. Gali, Justice Support Services.
Good morning. So I'm going to draw your attention to our organizational structure here that just kind of highlights our program. So again, the 3 things that we do in justice support are our pretrial services there. You can see the structure, and then our adult treatment court to the other side with our substance screener, the person that does our drug testing there in the middle. again, we provide drug testing not only for these two programs, but for our diversion program in the DA's office, as well as some CPS cases in Health and Human Services. The only other thing that we do is our CJCC, our Community Justice Collaborating Council, but that really is just myself and Judge Needham, and then others that are participants. I did give our department report in January, so there's not a lot to highlight over the last 90 days. I think the one thing that I would maybe just go back to is our budget. We really have found some good footing with our budget now. Justice Support was created about 4 years ago, so I think we've gotten to a point where we're comfortable with the amount of staff that we have, with the resources that we provide to the courts. We have recently started to repurpose some of our staff as the needs of the courts change, and divided up individuals' time into some other programming. We've taken on a project here in the last 6 weeks doing some court navigation work where we're assisting during intake to help defendants that are maybe uncertain of the court process, what that looks like, how to fill out paperwork for court-appointed attorneys, public defenders. That seems to be going really well. we are not asking for any new positions for 26, but that court navigation position, I think, is something that we, as a county, might want to, as we continue to work in the background on that, consider for future budgets down the line. I think it's a nice collaborative position that brings together us, the courts, public defender's office, the sheriff's office, and something that I think could find its way into our system in the future and provide a lot of value. We've got some really good anecdotal evidence of defendants talking to our staff about how just sitting with this court navigator kind of brought down their anxiety for those court appearances that for people that haven't been justice involved, I think it can be confusing. And so I think that's something that we can look forward to. But otherwise, I don't have any, real updates. I'm happy to take any questions.
All right, very good. Oh, sorry.
I was just looking at the grants. Again, there's substantial amount from the state. Do you see that may become an issue for this coming year?
That's a great question. Thank you. I don't, as of right now. Most state money does come from the federal government, and so that is a concern. So our TAD grant, our Treatment Alternatives and Diversion, that is split between our treatment court and our diversion program, it's a fairly sustainable grant. The one thing that we will be looking at is in 2027, that grant does become competitive again. So I think independent of some of these cuts happening at the federal level, we will be coming back to the table with other counties and competing for grant dollars that are available. Right now, the Department of Justice and the state has roughly $10 or $11 million that they're putting towards this TAD grant that we receive, a small percentage of that. I think there are maybe 55 counties that currently receive that grant. I would expect in 2027 that number to increase. I don't know that all 70 counties across the state will apply. But to answer your question, no, it's a very sustainable grant that we've received now in the state for, I think we're on 11 years now. So we've gone through several competitive cycles and received not only that money, but increases. And so in 2025 here, we received like a $30,000 or $40,000 increase. And so I feel good about that grant, but I guess we'll see what happens.
Not necessarily a question for you, but for the rest of the department heads that come forward, I'd like to know if you have grants that you're particularly concerned about.
All right, very good. Thank you, Phil. District Attorney Carl Anderson, come on down.
Good morning, everyone. It's only been since January that I did my last department report, so I'll be relatively brief. The update since then, we hadn't had a reimbursement for victim witness from the state yet at that point, so our revenues were low. However, after the we got that. We actually had a $24,000 surplus in revenue beyond what we had budgeted because the state increased their reimbursement rate for victim witness. Overall, the DA's office budget was $8,000 under budget. One thing I realized I left off of my department report was one of the budget priorities is digital media sharing discovery. I talked about this at the last one, but we actually have a relatively accurate dollar figure. So basically right now, from every single agency within the county, law enforcement agency, there's many different ways we get digital evidence. So body camera footage, security footage, photos. Some hand deliver it on flash drives, some put it onto CDs, some we get digitally or electronically. Our legal assistants then have to save those to our system, download them, and then put them onto flash drives or CDs and save them on those to give them to defense as part of discovery. It's the single biggest time suck within our office for legal assistants. And when they're downloading these hours-long videos, their computers are slow. So basically, legal assistants always in the background on their computer, they're downloading media, digital media. So we've been trying to find a software company that can expedite that for us. There's a couple options, one through Axon and one through, I'm trying to remember the other one. I'm spacing on the other one, but basically what they do is we haven't signed anything. We've made no promises because they're still working on integration on their end to make it work with the body cameras that our agencies use. But in effect, what it would do is the body camera footage from law enforcement would automatically be uploaded to our system, and then we could click a button, click send, and it'd go to defense. So it would be an absolute huge time saver for us. We wouldn't have to be downloading all these unless we needed it for an exhibit for trial. The cost is roughly $18,000 annually. But the time we'd save some money, actually probably quite a bit on postage, because currently it's like $6 every time we mail out a flash drive for the padded envelope for the actual flash drive. I think our postage last year was like $7,000, and then it'd be an absolute massive time save for legal assistance, which would help free up their time and mean I'm not coming back in a year asking for another legal assistant because they're spending all their times downloading videos. The other ask is the same one I've had for several years, another diversion worker. We've adjusted how we do things in diversion so that we're not overwhelming them. Basically, we've shortened the length of our agreements. We've gotten pickier on who we give diversions to. You know, there's some cases where maybe we'd love to give them a diversion, but we don't want to overwhelm our current staff, so we don't. So we're more restrictive, less people have that opportunity. So that remains another ask is for a diversion position. I think that's all about what I have. The rest in our report is what I went over last time. Yeah, Supervisor Bernie.
Thank you, Mr. District Attorney. So I have a question for you regarding this digital media storage. Would it be advantageous for us to approach Counties Association and see if the state, through the Department of Justice, like if we can't get the state legislature to fund something on a grander scale, which would make it easier and probably even more cost effective? Would that be something you would help us with or support?
So that's been an ask from like basically every DA's office in the state for the last few years. The State Department of Administration contracted with a company, but it's really not that big of a fix. We can send this stuff digitally to defense, but we still have to download it first with the company they contracted with. It doesn't link in with law enforcement. So we still have to get it from law enforcement however they get us. We have to download it, but then we can send it digitally. So we started doing that with the public defender's office just to see how it works and make sure we're not gonna get a bunch of pushback from defense for sending things electronically. They like it. So I think, I don't think any defense would have an issue of, you know, the new mode of discovery, but it doesn't really, it saves them the added step of putting it onto a flash drive and sending it in the mail, but it doesn't save the time of downloading all the video from CDs, flash drives, from online websites. So it's like a partial fix, but not a complete one. So that, the state has had that, and the DAIT, so the IT department for district attorneys throughout the state, sent out a questionnaire on, you know, what fixes, and I think the consensus from DAs was they need to have better digital evidence options for software. Whether that will happen someday, I don't know, but hopefully it would, and then we would no longer have to have that expense if we were able to go forward with that, but I just don't know when or if it will happen at the state level.
So something the state has right now is does not really fix the issue that you guys are having of clogging up network and staff time.
Correct.
So I think that's something we should consider really pushing from our end, as long as you guys support it. But I think grander scale, we could get something better.
Yeah.
But then the reason I say that, I'm sorry, 1 second. If we spend the money on this and then we do the install cost or whatever it is that to set this up, it doesn't make any sense to do that right out of the gate if we've got a year or two before we can get this done.
There's no install cost. It's basically you get everyone in the office would get a login for the website, and then they just do the company. Basically, I said I'm not even interested unless you guys get the integration all working. I'm not even gonna go for the ask, you know, because they're like, hey, how about we sign the contract and we'll work on it after? I'm like, no, no. yeah. So once I know it's working, you know, then we can talk. So there's currently 2 companies that both say they're working on the full integration, and then it should be as easy as us getting logins, and there should be no startup cost. It'd just be the subscription fee. Yeah.
Flash drives scare me. That seems like the most unsecure thing. So I'm hoping that we can get this done, because you see all the espionage movies, you know, they get lost, they don't work. I know you know this, but we have to get this done.
Yeah, right now we have like filing cabinets with digital media, with files with defendants' names on them. Some have CDs, some have flash drives, some have a link in our folders on where to find it. Yeah. Any other questions?
Yes, we do.
I do.
Yeah.
Can you give us a little more detail or talk a little bit more about the adding the diversion program case manager specialist, what impact that would have on your department?
Sure. So currently there's really kind of 2 tracks we have for diversion. The one track is somebody with a low-level misdemeanor, no prior history, their score low risk on the compass. And you know, it's criminal, and maybe not, it's severe enough that we don't want to just say, okay, we'll change it to a ticket, be on your way. You know, maybe it's clear they have some sort of substance use issues or something like that. We want to give them the chance to earn the right to not have a criminal conviction, but we still want some supervision for them to make sure they're maintaining sobriety, getting treatment, so we put them in diversion. The other track is, most common is first-time felony drug offenders. So, you know, they maybe have a disorderly conduct, retail theft in their past, and they get arrested with meth. We want to give people the opportunity to avoid being a convicted felon because of their addiction. So we say, okay, you can plead to the felony, but we won't enter the conviction. It'll be supervised, kind of like they're on probation. So that's what the diversion workers do within our office, is they supervise these people on diversion. They test at JSC. They have to submit proof of their alcohol and drug abuse assessment and treatment. And then, you know, we used to do 3 years on a felony to make sure that they could long-term maintain their sobriety and weren't gonna just be back again in a year or 2. So on those kind of felony track ones, we reduced it to the starting point of 2 years. Sometimes we do 18 months. just because we can't keep people in that long with our staffing. And then on the misdemeanor level, first-time offenders, we're either having to do one of two things. You know, obviously we still have some capacity, but we have to be more picky because our diversion was getting overwhelmed. So sometimes we might say, okay, we will just give you a ticket because we don't think you need a criminal conviction, and maybe we'd prefer they be on supervision. Or we're delaying the case in the court process so they can do an AODA, drug and alcohol abuse assessment before, and then we give them a ticket, but then it clogs up the court system. So we're just really having to get more picky, to try to reduce the caseload for diversion workers, and we would like to not have to do that, but that's the reality given, you know, the caseload. We try to keep the diversion caseload similar to what probation agent has, which is like about 80 cases per person. And we're higher than probation is.
All right, very good. Thank you, Carl.
Thank you.
Lisa, child support.
Good morning. Let's get down to child support here. So I did give a report back end of last year, so I won't take too much of your time. I do have to say this is the first time I can tell you that we're in the red. It's very strange for us. I'm expecting another payment any time, so working on that. I don't know what the delay is. Have not heard of any budget cuts. Haven't heard of any grants. The grant that we have right now is the domestic violence grants to provide safety for participants who are survivors of domestic violence. So we are working with the judiciary and with other agencies and corp counsel to provide those safe services for those participants. So I am expecting that grant will continue. We have not heard that there has been any cuts on that end of things. So status quo. In 2024, we did not meet all 4 performance measures. We missed the arrears performance measure by about $1,400 is what we lost in our budget, but that's pretty good. We are on track this year to meet and exceed all 4 performance measures. And accomplishments, we've worked with, again, the judiciary and other collaborating agencies. I'm very interested in the court navigator that the JES is piloting right now for maybe a family law or family court navigator. We have some interest within specialists in our office that would be willing to do something like that in addition to their other work. And then working with UW Extension and Turning Point and Restorative Services to try to get some specific resources for participants and individuals. We did revamp our office resource manuals. We have provided everything in alternative language format, especially Spanish, which is the highest percentage in our county. And so all of our resources are in English and Spanish to provide for them for more efficient services. And I don't have any asks for 2026, so are there any questions?
I noticed in your issues, concerns, and restraints, you mentioned overcoming barriers in developing processes with our judiciary. Can you talk a little bit about those barriers?
Well, there is a fine line between what we can inform the courts before a hearing. So in regards to providing safety services, we cannot give ex parte information to a court. So navigating the safety protocols with the court for participants to attend their hearings, making sure that our corp counsel is aware of any safety concerns we have for victims. So that's a fine line. We don't want to cross that line. We are working on amending some local court rules and maybe provide some specific details so that the courts are aware there are other actions involving the safety of the family.
I have a question, and maybe you've covered it. When you talked about increased staff training, I believe you mentioned you were going to make use of Wisconsin Extension.
Yes,
I'm glad to hear that. Thank you.
yes.
All right.
I'm just a little confused by the one above the chart that gives the budget data. It says, as of March 4th, we provide service to approximately 55,301 children. And then there are two stats here, 3,832 persons paying support, alleged fathers, and 3,662 persons receiving support, and non-legal relatives. And then I look down there, and it looks like the caseload is 3,000. I'm just confused with the numbers that are being presented. How many kids are getting support, and how many parents are paying support?
So we could have multiple cases with individuals. So they could be out-of-home placement, so foster care, kinship care with non-legal relatives. So the number looks kind of skewed because we do have over 5,300 children that we have provide services for in 2024, or as of March 4th of 2025. But depending on who's getting that money and where that money is flowing to, would skew the number of paying parents. So we could have a case with 4 children versus, so there's higher children than there are parents.
Thank you.
Did I explain that correctly, Heather?
Very good. Thank you,
All right,
Lisa.
Thank you.
All right, next up is the sheriff.
Good morning, thank you. We had just presented in February for our 2024, so much has been just pushed over onto the new form. I do have some updated numbers, though, I wanted to share that I thought were of interest and moving forward things to look at. This morning we had 121 inmates in the jail. We got up to 126 at the end of last month. One of the other things that, my thanks to Christy Severson, we looked through the Wisconsin CCAPs, and we were looking for those individuals that had competency hearings, competency reports, and order for competency examinations that are jail-related. Through the 16th of last month, there were 11 defendants that in some form had one of these 3 requests or orders from the courts. And those orders, there were 16 orders that related to 11 defendants. Last year, there was 63 orders that involved 44 defendants. So we had 44 people in jail last year that there was a question of if they could be competent in order to go to court, be held responsible for any of their charges, any of their accusations. So 44 last year. The year prior was 26. In 22, we had 28. In 21, we had 27. And in 2020, we had 31. So last year was quite a spike, and we are on pace for that mid-40s or more again for those being held. And I even think there's probably some since the 16th of March, pushing that 11 higher. I thought that was a kind of a telling that we had not looked at before, but, and as I mentioned, some of those that are held for competency and are not competent, in order for them to get down across the state to be held to be made competent, or an attempt to make them competent, sometimes it's 90 days out, 120 days out that they're still sitting in jail, not competent, awaiting to be transported for a bed. So some of the things as we look forward to the future that I do not think will subside. The other thing that off of last statistics that we shared, open records, something that does impact, I think, many divisions and many departments in the county. Our open records requests in 2023 were 2,150. We had reported that. In 2024, 2,512. And this year, as of yesterday, we're already at 770. So we look at surpassing 3,000 at this rate this year. And one thing on the open records, added to that is now squad car camera, not just body cam, but actual squad car cam, which adds an extra added stress. And we are starting to get inundated with YouTubers, social media, all wanting body cam. And those aren't just simple, hey, give me an accident report. Those are, give me everything involved in this case because it looks real interesting and they're from out of state asking for all these things. So that's not subsiding. I'm not sure where the legislation is gonna go on some of that, so. The question was asked on grants. We only have really kind of our Edward Byrne grant, with one of our drug grants that is partially funded by federal. I don't anticipate that that's going to go away, so I don't believe any of our drug grants at this point will be impacted, so. But I'm not sure. We have no asks for, large asks as far as any staffing. You guys have been very supportive, thinking outside the box and getting us the staff that we've been looking for, so we don't have any asks along those lines for next year. Any questions or drilling down?
Thank you, Sheriff. How does with the district attorney, his request with wanting the media storage connected to those types of things, how would that help your department in regards to like the FOIA requests that you're getting?
I'm not sure on the FOIA request, but as far as Carl, I know some of our more technologically savvy staff have been meeting with Kathy Halverson and Carl on, I don't know if cloud-based is the right word, or somewhere to store it. Other agencies will put it on a CD and deliver it to the DA's office. We try to send the link, which obviously is what impacts them. With this new GTAC body cam system, that is more of a curveball, but we are trying to work with them on something that is useful for both of us. So if there's something that can help us down the road, but.
So I guess I guess I should really dial down to what I'm asking. Can you walk us through what that takes? Can somebody walk us through what it takes to deliver a FOIA request?
I can absolutely have somebody come up and walk you through.
Yeah, because I mean, if it's like something that's a burden to you, like I'm hoping that's whatever the district attorney does can help you offset it as well. I think it could be a 2-for-1.
Well, I think they're two different things. What we send up to the district attorney's office, but Tammy is our open records. She puts everything on flash drives, thumb drives. Sometimes it's even the link. Depends on how they request it, and she can send that link out. And then however they download it on their end, it's fine with them.
So if they request it via a thumb drive or a CD, are we with, I know Freedom of Information requests, if there's an additional burden or staff time, you can charge for certain things. So, I mean, I'm looking at if they're requesting a thumb drive or a flash drive or a CD, that's different from being able to give them a link to something. Oh, here we go. I've stepped in something, I think.
And it's almost a daily basis that there's discussions
Right.
of
I speak to Tammy daily on public records requests. So the legislature did try to change law enforcement's ability to charge for doing public records requests if someone makes more than 10 requests a year and their requests are for monetary purpose, so like a YouTube request. So Tammy keeps track of those to see once somebody gets to 10 requests, and if it's for monetary purposes, she can start billing her time for that. Up until that point, all you can bill for is the cost of the flash drive or the CD. Cannot charge for redaction time. Unfortunately, that's the largest amount of Tammy's time is redacting. Now, she doesn't need to redact when the request is going to the DA's office for criminal charges, but any public defender, defense counsel, law firm, YouTube request, those all have to be redacted, and that's what takes time, and the statutes do not allow us to charge for her time to redact. There's case law on that.
Yes. And if you want to stop down and have the actual walkthrough with folks, so for you, that'd be great. Anything else? Thank you very much.
Thank you, Sheriff. All right, Corporation Counsel, you are up.
All right. Well, I just gave my presentation last month, so I don't have much to add to it. I appreciate Ken added the variance section in my budget. My office doesn't receive any grants, so we don't have any grants that are concerned for 2026. I'm not asking for any new positions. We will continue to increase our productivity rate billing, so hopefully other departments can seek reimbursement. But beyond that, it will just be minor increases in software that we hopefully can offset in cutting other places. So that's all I have, unless you have any questions.
Oh, looks like they're gonna let you off easy.
Ken, if I could jump in for just one moment while you're calling up the next party. I was just going to say, I really appreciated the presentations on the screen of how you're presenting the annual reports and the budget requests. And I know the admin committee did a lot of work in working with you on that. And I just think it's a great presentation. I don't know if anybody else has any observations about that or any suggestions to make it even better, but I think this really looks good in my opinion.
Glad you're enjoying it. It was.
Did I say that?
Yeah. Yeah. Well, it was a bunch of different ideas that we compiled all together, so it's good to see that it actually works. We'll see by the end of the day if you still think that. My budget is the next one, or department report that's up next. So the administration department is responsible for financial planning for the county, budgeting for the county, coordination between all the departments, implementing policies that are set by the county board. We also manage the insurances for the county. We directly do that. Communications with the public through our public information officer, and then we also do employee recognition. Our picnic and annual events recognizing employees are all coordinated through the county administrator's office. And I have no additional requests for 2026. Seeing no questions, we'll move on to the county clerk.
Success. I got my stuff up on the screen all by myself. So the county clerk's office, just a couple of highlights from 2024, along with 35 municipal clerks throughout the county. We successfully administered 4 elections in 2024. One of them being the 2024 presidential election, where St. Croix County had 91% of registered voters participating in that election, which is extremely high. Throughout the year, we've worked closely with Corp Counsel and the Treasurer's Office to streamline the process of tax deed properties, worked on amendments to the Chapter 3 ordinance, just some things of moving over to the new South Edition, purging files, and getting rid of everything that was in remote storage. That's all been destroyed. County Clerk's Office oversees 4 budgets: the County Clerk Department, County Board, election budget, and then the dog fund budget, all of which ended with surpluses that are explained in the report. We do not receive any grants at the County Clerk's Office.
We facilitated the sale of 14 tax deed properties in 2024, and we continue to grow with processing of passport applications, photos, and marriage license applications. And we have no new asks for anything in 2026. Does anybody have any questions?
All right, very good. Audrey is up next with Human Resources.
Can I bring one question?
Sure,
But this is actually on the admin part. Just update, how are things looking for our clinic facility and where we're standing with that right now?
Yeah, it's actually a great question for Human Resources because they're the ones that administer employee benefits, and that is one of the benefits.
Our facilities, since they're building it.
Pointing the finger.
I believe the move-in date is May 5th, right around there, May 6th. And then they'll take a couple weeks to get everything situated, and grand opening should be like June 4th, right around there. So, and that'll be kind of one of the updates that I'll provide as well. So, no budgetary asks for 2026 from HR. The past year, we really focused on strengthening our recruitment and retention efforts, digitizing the rest of our records, and launching the county's on-site clinic initiative. So looking ahead to 2025, our priorities include expanding our leadership training, opening the on-site clinic, and then strengthening engagement efforts and optimizing our HR technology, or utilizing Oracle a little bit more to its full potential. So a key investment in this effort was the addition of the training and development specialist. So I did want to thank the board for approving that position last year. It's really, I think, already proving to be a really invaluable asset. Tony is our new training and development specialist, and she is outstanding. She's already assessed and updated all of our online training content, which I thought would take her like 9 months. So, and she's already met with most of the department heads to identify kind of the skill gaps and what they would like out of a training program. And she's been collaborating with UW Extension to develop a leadership training program, which she really has plans to launch in Q4 of this year already. So we're excited about that. And I really think that the investment that you guys made is really going to help with employee growth and retention overall, improving company culture. So I also wanted to highlight the phenomenal Q1 utilization of the on-site clinic. So even though we're not opening on-site until June, we do have limited capacity at their current Hudson location, and also we're open 1 day a week on-site at the services center. We've done over 500 labs already in the first 3 months, and then I don't have appointment numbers for March yet, but for January and February, we had 200 patients seen just from our staff. So I really think that the results are going to demonstrate not only the demand that we had for the clinic, but also its potential impact on employee well-being and hopefully overall cost savings for the health insurance plan. So it's looking very promising so far. The last thing I just wanted to take note was just a moment to recognize my team. As board members, you probably have limited interaction with them, but they really are exceptional. I hear so many compliments from the supervisors and leadership team. I just can't say enough good things about them. They are dedicated, they are committed to the county, and it's evident in everything they do. So that is all I have. Questions?
I have a question
Yeah.
for you. So on the, you were mentioning the number of labs that are doing, in comparison, when we're doing these in-house labs versus when we were under contracts with others, do you just a roundabout number of what kind of savings that is?
Oh, current savings on it? I want to say, so we get the labs at cost. So I don't know what the markup is for some of the other physicians that outside of our current on-site provider, but I could look at that analysis. I just don't have it off the top of my head. He wouldn't have the
It'd be a leaf-
specific
it'd be a
breakdown
leaf
for
question.
labs.
Yeah, so labs are
Right.
costing us about $15 to $20 compared to over $100, potentially over $200 purchase at a regular hospital facility. So we're saving a lot of money on the labs, and the 200 visits that we saved, those are all at virtually no cost for the county because we've prepaid it by buying the clinic. But those are 200 visits that we're not paying to an outside healthcare provider.
Right. So you think $300 to $400 a visit plus $100 to $200 a lab? Yeah. Carrie?
Last year, I recall that you had a turnover rate of 15%, and it looks like now we're at 13.
Yes.
Do you have a target goal that you'd like to see the turnover rate to be? Because we know it's expensive to recruit, retain.
I'd like to see 10 to 12%. That really is, 13% is really kind of on the low end of the public sector already. So I think we're doing good, but I also think we could do better. A lot of our turnover is people leaving for career advancement opportunities, which I know we've tried to figure out some solutions for over the years of making career progression type of positions. But the county is only so large. We do only have so many positions available. So that is something that's probably going to continue to occur. But I don't see any real factors that are looking like that they are concerned about wages or benefits or overall culture or big concerning factors of why we have turnover. But I still think there's a couple of areas we could tweak to lower that down.
Thank you.
I really appreciate the chart with termination reasons. I like that. I had two questions for you. One, we have the 15 that are other and unknown. Are they people that are not doing an exit interview, or how does that number come to that?
Some of them are, just choosing not to participate, or they just don't want to say when they do fill it out. And others are, those that leave without notice. And so we just don't get a chance. Or they were on-call employees and never met with HR or are limited on their email access and don't fill out the survey online. Yeah.
All right, and then my other question was current open positions. Do you have an idea of where we're at off the top of your head?
How many requisitions do we have out there right now? 20, in the low 20s, I believe. But that does include some of our, so we have park specialists and park laborers right now. We always have the intern. We always have like 3 or 4 healthcare campus openings for LPN, CNA, PCA. So some of those are kind of constant. So probably closer to 15 to 18 that are due to turnover and need new recruitments. Anything else?
Very good. All right, John Allegro, Information Technology.
Good morning, supervisors. 2024, we were pretty busy with construction and planning, moving forward here with Area B, and looking forward into 2025, we're hoping to finish that up. Oh. Sorry about that. We don't have any budget asks for looking forward into 2026 budget. We do see some increases in software subscriptions that we're part of that we're going to try and absorb within our budget right now. We had a little bit of a surplus because of a subscription that we chose not to renew because they really jacked the rate up on that software. So we're looking at alternatives to that software platform as we move into 2026, and hopefully we'll have a solution in place before the end of the year while that software is still covered by support. We don't deal with any grants federally, but we do get some services from the feds that we've already been warned that some of those security services have been cut, and what they are is incident response type services. So we met on Monday with that group, and they're looking at maybe a subscription basis. There's 18,000 members in this group, And if everybody contributed about $1,000 a year, they should be able to make up the cuts from the feds. So it's minimal, and the services that we receive from them are very impactful to the county. It would cost us tens of thousands of dollars to duplicate them on our own. So we're looking for that. Yeah, that's about all I have. Any questions?
So you're saying, besides just software costs, there's no new positions that you need?
Correct.
But the cuts that one of your support organizations that the federal government has for security basically is, it's going to cost us about $1,000.
About $1,000 a year, and I'll absorb that within.
Oh, so you, in the budget you present, you're going to have that with just in the software increases then, basically? You're just going to present it in there?
So
Okay.
last year I signed contracts with Oracle and Microsoft, which locked in our pricing for 3 years, so those are fixed through next year. So next year, going into 2027, I may have some budget increases due to Microsoft and Oracle increases that are relatively uncontrollable on my part. But everything else that I've asked for is within that budget. Thank you.
Thank you, John. Dustin? Oh, yeah.
Just jump in for 1 second, Ken. As I mentioned earlier, we've got 21 reports we'll be hearing this morning. We've now heard from 12. I think we've moved along pretty quickly. We've got 9 to go. Are there any, I thought if we were going at the same rate, we might not take a formal break because that takes a long time just to take the break. Anybody can feel free at any time to leave the room if they have to, but if we don't have any extended questions with any of the reports, we'll probably finish by 11:30 and break for noon. Does anybody have any other comments about that we need to do anything differently? If not, that'll kind of be the plan that we'll continue. I'm sorry to interrupt.
No problem. All right, good morning, everybody. Finance Department, our typical day-to-day, we handle the accounts payable for the county and payroll, as well as assisting Ken with the budget, financial reports, and the audit. 24 was an exciting year because in March we got fully staffed, and we remained fully staffed throughout the end of the year, so that was a nice change from the last few years. We look to continue that as well. What we've been focusing on a lot is Oracle, our ERP systems, had a lot of changes coming and being implemented over the last year and this coming year, so we're really working with that. We work close with HR on a lot of the changes, just to try and make things function better and ease that transition for employees as they see the changes. Last year, we finished under budget, which is great. Our concerns going forward, our audit costs continue to rise every year. Not a lot we can probably do about some of these things. They're in the business to make money as well. We work well with CLA, but there's just a lot of changes in the reporting required, and it just costs more money to audit. The other big thing is fraud we're concerned about, especially with the rise of AI. We really want to make sure that when our people are getting into their payroll process, that we're not getting caught updating someone's account on their behalf. We push it on employees to change that, and as well as our vendors. We make sure to do our due diligence to make sure that it's a legitimate request if they're changing their payment type or the address. We don't have any budget ads for 26, no requests, so nothing's going to change. Any questions from the board? All right, thank you.
Supervisor Tino want to know if we've paid those Illinois toll fines yet. Very funny. County Treasurer Denise Anderson.
Good morning, everybody. I'm just going to keep mine super short. I think we did some good things in 2024 in our department. Worked on some improvements and streamlined some things, different procedures that we do, but they're kind of outlined pretty well there in the written report. I can take any questions if anyone has those. And then for 2026, I don't anticipate any changes for much change at all on either side for over 2025 budget. So.
The fastest one yet. Thank you, Denise. All right, facilities, Taylor Mabus.
Morning. I'll see if I can beat her. We really had two big projects last year, and
this is one of them, moving to the south. And then the jail railing project was another big project that we undertook. Other than that, I have no budget changes or no ask for next year. Just want to thank all the departments for helping us with the move, and my guys have been busy and are going to be busy again this year. So, any questions? Go ahead.
Couple with all the expansion and what you've been, congratulations on big projects that have been undertaken. But with all this, how is it impacting us, or your proposed out and everything for the utilities and staffing for services and everything working out, or we're not, we don't have any issues with any of that you see in the forthcoming future?
We added a mechanic last year to help with that, and then we've increased the budget. I don't think I'll be this year for our utility bills, so we've pre-planned ahead for that. Any other questions? Okay, thank you.
All right. Up next is the Highway Department. Todd, you get to present today. Slide the screen up there to Highway for us.
Absolutely. No, so Robbie sends his regards. Surprisingly, this is my first time at the podium here, even after my 28 years at the Highway Department. I've had different roles there. I'm the Assistant Commissioner. Todd Wernault is my name for those that don't know me. So thank you. What's that? Oh, thank you. I started talking before I just want to start with a quick story. And I'm sorry, I'm not going to be the quickest one up here. There's an old tale where after it snows on a robin's backside 3 times, we can officially call it spring. So I'm here as an ask. This is my ask today, is that we can declare winter done and get on with spring. Yes, perfect. And the reason I go there is I had to look at this myself, and it's a common question we get when it appears to be lighter than normal winters, which we've had, and so I had to look at the budget myself. We historically track 60% for the first half of the winter and 40 for the second, and we're closer to those historical budget numbers than I saw. These little events, we go through the same operations and the same procedures as we do with the measurable events. So we had a successful 24 as outlined in our goals and achievements. The area I want to focus in on is we were fortunate to obtain a number of grants in 24, and you can see where there's a significant local funds or a percentage of local funds attached to a number of these grants, and we're blessed in St. Croix where we have a tool to help us meet our transportation goals, and that's the vehicle registration fee. And so we thank you for your support of that and helping us continually meet our transportation goals. And as far as I know today, I don't know of any issues with any of our grants and funding mechanisms. Our other accomplishments, we've outlined in the next section. You helped us, secure funding for a new Hudson shop. We'll continue to work with all of our different partners, Our fog sealing invasive species programs continue to grow. The survey division had a successful year. Issues, constraints that we see moving forward, managing materials. Our salt comes from Canada. We're not quite sure what that looks like yet. Other equipment items come from Canada and other parts of the world. Managing our federal programs, and ensuring that we meet our program schedules. In 25, some of our objectives are we're putting ourselves on a salt diet, going more towards liquid than granular salt. Again, managing those state and federal grants. Robbie's working hard on the Safe Streets and Highways grant for us. We're going to be starting our Hudson Highway Facility project late April, early May. Those plans and specs will be bid out at that time. And then continuing to work, with all of our partners. And then as the important items as we look into 26 is we're not requesting any additional positions and no additional levy from the highway department. Questions?
Thank you, Todd, for your presentation. And I just wanted to point out, it amazes me, and I think all of the Transportation Committee, the efficiency and the detail that you guys provide and in cost savings and getting the highways. I still say if you go north, south, east, or west, you can't find highways like you have here in St. Croix County.
We take pride in that.
I want to say, yes, I want to say thank you again. And one other thing we're missing goes back to our county clerk. The vehicle registration fee, we commonly called it a wheel tax, and I'm sure I'm going to get in trouble. But I propose a paw tax. Look at all the cats that we're missing. We could charge $3 a paw for all the dogs and all the cats in St. Croix County. And look at all the money we'd be able to bring in for revenue. Thank you very much, and thanks again.
One more question, Todd.
I did want to personally thank you for the County A project and the roundabout in McCutcheon that's made an enormous difference on that road. It's absolutely wonderful. So it's made a huge, huge impact.
I noticed in the report that there's thankfully no big accidents. I know we had them some bad years.
Yes.
Is that due to God blessing us, or did you do training programs, or who knows?
All the above.
Okay.
We haven't had as many events, I think, so we have had some close calls. Nothing to the winter 2 years ago. But yes, we spend a lot of time training, and making ourselves aware of the issues out there. We're doing other things like putting dash cams in our vehicles to help our drivers in those situations. Yeah, but it all goes back to speeds and distracted driving and those type of things we're trying to help our employees with. Thank you.
I noticed in the report that we did 19 and a half miles of hot mix asphalt instead of 14. Is that mostly, kudos to you on that. That's a huge overage on the goal, but is that mostly due to the plowing savings from previous years?
Yes.
Mhm.
Yes, it's a couple of combinations of what we were successful with there. Some of our grant funding mechanisms and how they fell into place helped us achieve that. We did have a cost savings from the winter of '23 that we, budgeted forward in the '24 construction season. And then our vehicle registration fee, what we anticipated the DOT starting the $20 fee, they enacted that sooner, so we started receiving those funds earlier, and so we were able to put those dollars right back out on the road.
Thank you.
It's two things. First off, being that you don't really get in front of us too much and the amount of time you put in, thanks for your service to the county.
Thank you.
So,
Thank
the other thing, I just had a question on the salt versus the liquid. Is there the toxicity of liquids on vehicles versus salt? Is there any difference, how is that helping?
There's a benefit where the liquid isn't as corrosive as that granular salt. So we're still meeting our maintenance goals, but yet reducing that granular on our roads. This material gets in our streams, environment. We're able to reduce those impacts as well, Scott. So it's a benefit to anyone traveling through St. Croix. Is you're not seeing as much granular, you're seeing more liquids. Thank you.
Yeah, that liquid salt, the concept behind it is you put that down wet onto dry pavement, and it dries then relatively quickly. When you come by and plow then, it's creating that barrier because it's melting right at that contact point, so it scrapes off better. When you try to put salt granules down on top of snow after the fact, it's creating a big salty slush mess that then sticks to the bottom of your car or gets washed off into the streams and stuff. So,
Our operators are able to turn there's a dial, there's a spinner in each plow truck, and historically those pounds per mile have been anywhere from 400 north of there, and we're seeing those averages come down now with the liquid advancement technology. We're out anti-icing ahead of the storm, creating that barrier so that doesn't adhere, the snow and ice doesn't adhere to the roadway. And then also in the plow truck itself, the liquid is getting injected into the granular, and that's how we're able to reduce those granulars, and it's plopping out more like oatmeal than it is a drier material. That's the goal. It doesn't happen in every case, in every event, but that's what we're working towards. I've taken up enough of your time. Thank you for your continued support.
Todd. Thank you very much.
thank you, Todd. All right, Bob Rorit. Health and Human Services, our largest department. This might take more than a minute or two.
Yeah, I'm sure you're all pleased to see a 50,000-page report in the packet. I'll try and be, concise, but first of all, good morning. Let me move down here to ours, huh? Before I start, I just wanted to really thank my leadership team for helping me put this report together. We're doing it a little earlier than usual this year, so they had to kind of put aside some other things in order to get this done, but I think they did a nice job. I thought what I would do is just walk through the format of this a little bit and then see what questions you have. I did invite some of the managers here today in case you had specific questions that I can't answer. They're the subject matter experts for their areas, and every division of HHS is very specialized, so there's a lot of detail that goes in to each service area. It's my nice welcome message. Faye Strinke, she's not our finance manager, but the finance team that works with HHS is outstanding, and Faye's really been very helpful in putting together some of these budget summaries. So as you look at these first couple pages, there's summaries of the entire department, revenue and expense for actual versus budget for 24, and then the 25 budget. So she summarized those for the entire department. There's a total of FTEs for our entire department there at the bottom, 270.4. And then what I did was I asked all of the division administrators to put together a report based on this format, so it would be easier to go through instead of trying to put it all into one report, which I think would have been confusing and difficult to navigate. So each division did their own report based on this format with a budget status summary in each report and a organizational chart for each division. And then within that, they did their, filled in the headings. For the administration of HHS, that involves me, the Deputy Director, Char Lopez, our records supervisor, Tammy Wilson, Colleen Linder is our executive administrative assistant, and then under Colleen and Tammy are the records technicians and the office support staff. I based my report on the administration end of it on strategic plan goals and objectives and where we made some progress on our strategic plan in 2024. And as we move through this, I won't go into great detail because you can see everything that people put together, and we'll take questions after. But the two areas where I think I want to talk about a little bit are those things that impacted our budget in 2024 and are likely to continue impacting our budget, at least in the short term. Those areas primarily concern behavioral health and children's services. I'll just scroll down to the first one that comes up here. And in behavioral health division, the thing that we're struggling with in terms of budget impact is primarily emergency detention costs. Those are the costs when somebody needs to be transported to a hospital like Winnebago because of the severity of their condition, mental health and or addiction. Those costs associated with, say, Winnebago or comparable setting have increased over the years. Currently, I think it's $1,600 a day at Winnebago with a $300 a day add-on cost for the first 3 days. And we're primarily, that is, the county is primarily responsible for paying those costs. We do recoup some money through private insurance, but they often don't pay, or the person doesn't have private insurance. Medicaid won't pay for that kind of stay because it's considered an institution for mental disease. Those are primarily places that provide mental health care, residential mental health care with over 15 beds. They're excluded from Medicaid payment. There's efforts at the legislature right now, or I should say at the state level right now, to address that IMD exclusion, and hopefully if that waiver application is successful, would allow for Medicaid spending in those settings, and that would reduce our costs and our tax levy spending there. But the expense is not just with us, it's with law enforcement, transporting people great distances to these facilities, and all of the staff time that goes into that. Those costs continue to rise in terms of the facility per diems, and it's not likely that's going to stop anytime soon. Again, this IMD exclusion waiver would help address those costs, but that's a couple of years out, probably. And let me just scroll down here to children's services. I don't think this is a surprise to anyone, but the cost of children in out-of-home placement is also primarily borne by the county in tax dollars. There is no state assistance with those kids that are placed in these high-intensity or high-acuity settings, and those kinds of placements can be longer term, and they can be as costly as $200,000 to $500,000 a year. So if we have a child placed in one of these facilities for 1 or 2 years, obviously that blows our budget out of the water. There's not a lot we can do about this. What we can do about it is try and, as we have been doing, is try and follow this family first model of preventive and early intervention care and looking at alternatives to these high cost placements that cost less and hopefully lead to better outcomes. And through research do lead to better outcomes in many of these cases. That's because we want to keep families united. We want to keep the family together if we can and treat the child and the parents within that context. But for those cases where either the child needs a high acuity setting or a judge orders placement in a high acuity setting, then we have to pay for that. As Ken has talked about in the past, we've made several trips to Madison to talk with the legislature and help to inform them about what this means to county budgets and what this means to the costs going forward. So there's some solutions to that, potential solutions to that. Before the legislature, the WCA has put forward a couple of recommendations that would help us around psychiatric residential treatment facilities for kids, which would be a Medicaid-funded high-intensity care setting, and looking at other potential ways in which the state could support us with those costs. But those continue to rise, those costs continue to rise, and our ability to manage that is somewhat limited because, again, if a judge orders placement somewhere, we have to do that, and it could be out of state even if there isn't a facility within Wisconsin. So that's been a problem this year, and likely it will be going forward unless there's some substantial legislation passed that would help us with those costs. We do apply for a lot of grants. You can see them here, just a sample of children's services. All of those grants that every division, most every division applies for are listed within their division reports, so you can see the grants involved. Just quickly too, when you look at the organizational charts, you can see the total FTEs for that right at the top there. All right. I think I'll just, before I move into what I was going to talk about for 2026, I thought I would just ask if there are any questions about the report that we provided here for 2024 before I launch into, yes.
So of the grants that you applied for and are still receiving, are any at risk?
We had several grants last week that were ended. The good news is that most of those grants were supplemental grants for public health and behavioral health, and we either spent them already, or in the case of one grant that we did lose money on, it was about $60,000 in public health. It was an immunization supplemental grant. That money that came in after our budget process last year, so we weren't expecting to get that. We were still using it, though, to prepare or to cover immunization costs and to have one of our nurses code some of her time to it. By that grant going away, it doesn't impact us any more than if we had never gotten it, meaning that we went back to what we had originally budgeted for prior to getting that grant. It was helpful, and with the potential, at least, for measles to make its way to St. Croix County, it would have been helpful to have that money to prepare for, a potential measles outbreak. But that money's gone. The other grants in behavioral health were supplemental block grant dollars, and we spent those down already, so we didn't lose anything there. There's uncertainty going forward. I'll talk about that a little bit.
Okay, then I'll probably ask another question once you've done that.
Oh, sure. Was there any, yes?
This speaks to your strategic directive number 3, align priorities with vision.
Oh.
It says here, reduce number of children in out-of-home placement by nearly 50%. What are the raw numbers from year over year of kids in out-of-home placement?
I can give a rough estimate of that, and Michelle's here if you want very specifics, but we went from over 100 in out-of-home placement in '23, I believe, to about 60. Do you know, Heather, about 62 or
I think it's
so?
about 60 right now.
60, okay.
A good trend. And follow up from that then, do you see any correlation between substance abuse and even recessionary pressures on out-of-home placement, the catalysts that cause
So
family disruption?
Substance use is present. That is, substance use has some influence on about 75 to 80% of the families involved in child protection cases in different degrees of severity, right? So, but in about 75, say, % of the families involved in CPS, there is some substance-related reason that's impacting that family. What we did was we're addressing that in a couple of ways, but one way is that we used opioid settlement dollars to fund a position that specifically is a substance use professional that works within CPS to work with those families to help the parents primarily. It's parental substance use primarily. Help those families engage in some kind of support or formal treatment that may help them with their substance use disorder, but might also help them then with family reunification or help them as they go through the court process in terms of getting well as their children are involved in that as well. I mean, we're trying to keep the family united, obviously, and address the substance use while those families are under our
So one more follow-up. So, Lena, I'm sorry, I'm leaning back. So with approximately 40 fewer kids in out-of-home placement and recognizing no one can predict the future, do you see an opportunity for any reduction in costs on this, fewer staff resources needed?
Where we've been successful is in that reduction of about roughly 50% of those kids in out-of-home placement. We've been successful in the lower severity situations where kids could be treated or supported in ways other than residential settings. And our children's services staff have been very effective at doing that. It's that other 50% that are high acuity kids, just as an example, maybe a kid with nonverbal autism and behavioral conditions that make them violent or potentially violent. So those kids really can't be served at a lower level of care. There's an increasing number of those kids, and even a small increase in that number of kids who need that high acuity care really blows the budget up because of the cost. And just one last thing is the lack of capacity within Wisconsin for those kinds of needs is very limited. So you may have to look out of state and go wherever there's a facility within the United States that could serve them, and that obviously has a high cost attached to it.
Thank you.
So,
Couple of things, and you said that right now, currently, most of the moves for people with a mental illness is being brought to Winnebago.
I'd say the majority of those.
Okay, so it's about, what, about a 4-hour drive each direction? Okay, and then on the transport, we were talking about that. Currently are you contracting for doing those transports, or are those being done through the sheriff's office or local police, or how are those? Do you have any idea on that?
Sure, I might have some specifics around that, but I think it's primarily through law enforcement, through the sheriff's department and local PD. Is that right? Yeah, so the majority of them are that way. I don't know if there are contracts for transportation companies. I think there might be, but I'm not clear on who's using those.
So when that happens and we have, I'm sorry.
No, I was just going to say that the sheriff is here. He might want to add something to that. Then you can continue with your questions.
Kind of both. If a police department does an emergency detention, they get them down there, but the sheriff's responsible for getting them to court, tending to the courts, so then we have to go down and get them. We do utilize a transport service called Talent Transport. We have a budget line item for that. Can be for emergency detentions or for regular transports. We did use them the other night at midnight, 2 a.m.
Yes.
To go from Mayo down to there because we were at minimums on staffing, so. But most of the time it's patrol taking them down.
Okay, with that, a couple questions with that. When you do the transports, then that takes 2 deputies? You need 1 to accompany and then the driver?
Correct. Also, it depends. Sometimes we can do 1, but if they're violent, if it's gender specific, that can add to it. Time of day can add to it. We just took 1 from the jail, and that took 2. And when did they clear them? And we had to go back and get them. 12 hours.
Within less than 12 to 15 hours, the sheriff's office was turning around and going to pick him back up.
So.
With that, generally you have some in-processing time, so you're probably taking about 2 personnel, about 9 hours each, just per trip.
That's road time. The Mayo clearance was 12 hours before Talon could even get on the road and transport.
So then you got quite a considerable amount of overtime
Quite frankly,
too.
it could be a day. In this case, it was 12 and 9. Put all that together, Ken comes up with 21.
So, I think that answers for that part of it. Thank you.
Yes.
Another question so when you're bringing these people down to Winnebago, how many of these people with the mental illness are where they don't have any family support channels? Or do you have any idea on that? Or I know that's a loaded question, but
I don't have a specific range of that, no. I don't know. Do you know? No, we'd have to look.
Sure.
And get back to you.
Well, and with that in mind, even if you did have the potential for family support, if these patients are over 4 hours away, it would make it extremely difficult to be able to involve them to get them the additional family support that could potentially help with that person that has issue.
Yeah, that's a good point, Supervisor Cowner, and that is I guess it's sort of an obvious reality that the same thing applies to kids. If they're placed long distance away, you don't have the ability oftentimes for the family to be there and support them as they would be able to if it was more local. And that does have an impact. And then you bring someone back to the community they came from, you try and patch together supports for them, but there's a bit of a disconnect between their stay somewhere else and when they get back. So that does have an impact on outcome, yeah.
Okay. Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Question for you. Without going into the granular numbers too bad, looking at just the report and what you have for actual 24 surplus and loss, we lost almost 1.2 million in children's services above and beyond what the budget was. But if we take all the other departments, leaving the healthcare campus out of it, that's almost a wash. So if we're looking into this next budget cycle, what is your reaction to us shifting those funds to children's services rather than those departments where we had overage or surpluses, considering the budget that we have this year coming up?
I can actually grab part of that. A big part of their net profit, when you look at all the departments together, is the opioid funds that came in. They're recorded as a revenue when they're received, but our spending plan actually spreads out over 20 years. And so we ended up with, what was it, Faye, probably 800,000 plus of more opioid revenues coming in than we had expenses on our opioid expenses. So a big part of that offset was that one-time money coming in.
So it saved us, our budget from looking like we were $1 million over.
It's a really good thought, but yeah.
Are there any other questions about the annual report, or can I go ahead? Okay. All right, so as I said, some of these costs, these children in out-of-home placement and the behavioral health costs are likely to continue into 2026. We know that. We're doing things to mitigate that in our partnership with law enforcement around co-responder positions. The two ARPA-funded peer support positions are very helpful in preventing some of these placements because they can talk and meet with people prior to them escalating into a situation that could result in a hospitalization. We're working with Phil and Justice Support Services on ways in which we can partner with them around criminal justice involved people with behavioral health conditions and hopefully reduce the number of people that end up in jail with behavioral health conditions. That's the primary reason they're ending up in jail, and also help reduce law enforcement time. So we're doing some things already, and in children's services, as I mentioned, trying to do a lot of preventive work and having this position through opioid settlement funds to work with parental substance use and helping families in that way. So it does have a positive impact on what we do, but these costs are likely to continue to rise faster than we can prevent some of these things from happening. I think moving forward into 2026 with that all in mind, I think the other factor that I want to just quick mention is that funding for human services right now is sort of tenuous. And I mean that only in that we can't, I think, expect the status quo to continue into 2026, or we'd be remiss if we just assumed funding would stay the same going into 2026. So what do we do about that without knowing? And I think one of the solutions, and this is my primary ask for 2026 in terms of positions, we currently have the deputy director serving as deputy director and as behavioral health administrator. She's doing both jobs. She's able to do that. Most people couldn't, but she's able to do that and has been doing it for a couple of years. However, I think if we separated that out and hired a behavioral health administrator to allow Shar, in this case, to operate as a deputy director under the intended purpose of that position, I think we could diversify our funding streams, our revenue streams. We could partner better with law enforcement, with the criminal justice system to really develop this intentional coordinated service, I guess, that would be focused on criminal justice involved people, prevent people from going into the jail or treating them if they are in the jail, and doing more around that. Shar has a background in criminal justice system on top of being a therapist, so she's well suited for that kind of activity, and I think that's a good direction to move in. It's that intersection of public health and public safety. Phil's been very involved in the CJCC Behavioral Health Subcommittee that I chair, has been very involved in looking at the sequential intercept model, which is this method of planning. How do you do that in a system like this, a county government system? How do you work with the various partners, law enforcement, justice support services, and behavioral health to develop a system that addresses these kinds of needs within a population, as well as our community partners, hospitals, and recovery housing, and all of that. So my proposal in doing this, that is separating these positions, hiring a behavioral health administrator, separating the deputy director out, that's one component of what I'd like to do in the next year. The other component is looking at grant funding and other funding that would be related to that kind of effort, which would be different in many ways than what we've already become accustomed to applying for, which is very human service specific or population specific kinds of grants. The benefit to that is that we still adhere to our mission and do the things that we're meant to do as a human service department, but we're focusing on those high-cost, often underserved people that end up in our jails, end up in our hospital emergency departments, and cost the most money. If we can address that better, then we stand a chance at reducing these costs even without further assistance from the legislature or the state. That's part of what I'm asking for. I have a more in-depth proposal so I can answer more questions around that, maybe not today, but whenever you would like to know more about what I'm thinking there. That's my primary ask, is really having this position freed up to do some things that would help the entire department along the lines of like opening Kitty Roads with that grant money that Shar applied for, the Adult Protective Services grant that she applied for that helps to fund adult protective services for 4 years, things like that, but the department-wide, and help to bring in new revenue and help to streamline and develop these more integrated systems within HHS for divisions that serve similar populations. We're already doing some of this work, but it's too much for somebody to do one full-time job and then try and do this on top of it. I help with it. I'm not, I'm not asking for this to make my life easier, although this would make my life easier. But obviously I help with this, but it would have to have somebody with the clinical background and the background in criminal justice working with these partners would be, I think, a great opportunity for us. So that's my ask. The last thing I'll say, and then I'll see if there's questions. There are other asks within the annual report from other divisions. I'm not ignoring them. I'm not saying they're not important, but I understand the budget pressures this year. And I think what I would like to do is really look at those individual requests, see what funding we could get to offset the tax levy portion of those costs, and present them to the county administrator and say, if we got this position, here's the amount of tax levy it would cost, we think, based on other revenue that we could generate or supplant some of those tax levy costs with. So if I suggest new positions beyond what I've just asked for, they would come with that analysis and be in the new position request format that we require as part of the process. Okay, I'm done. Yes.
So the funding influx is a concern of, I think, most of us, especially Medicare and Medicaid. And if cuts happen there substantially, a lot of these services are mandated. And so if we lose that reimbursement, bad. Budget bad.
Yeah, we would have to do the best we could at that point.
Listening to, what your request is for those positions, and you're relating a lot of this to what currently a lot of the people that you're trying to help are becoming in the jail, dealing with them for the jail population. I guess two questions for that. For these people that are in there, what's the, and I think I've asked this of the sheriff before too, but approximately, do you know what the population of people that have those needs for services that are currently residents of the county jail?
The sheriff would probably know the
Better.
more accurate percentage. Okay. Would it be fair to say a significant percentage? Whatever that might translate to.
Okay, significant. Yeah. And then do we have like approximate what the typical resident costs that's incarcerated in the jail, what our daily cost is? Approximately. I mean, sorry, that's a hard one.
I think it's been a while since we've run the numbers on that. To house somebody from the outside, we charge $60 a day. And that's supposed to cover meals and medical and the housing, so, but I think it's somewhere with staffing, maybe 100.
Yeah, I mean, if you, that's just the incremental cost that we're charging, but that's not covering what the total cost actually is. I mean, because if you add up all of the staffing and if you added a depreciation of what the building portion cost, I mean, it would be significantly higher, thousands of dollars a day. Yeah. But I mean, that's not how you look at it, because the jail's gonna sit there whether there's 1 inmate or 100 inmates, so.
Nothing?
All right. That looks like that's it, Bob. Thank you. All right. Phil, Veterans Services. Which branch of the service were you in, Phil?
The Marine Corps. You know. The only branch. Oh, no. So thank you very much for the opportunity to present here. I wanted to also take the opportunity now to thank my staff and Joe Angusether. They do a great job when I'm out doing things like this and taking care of the veterans, so I'm very appreciative to them. So we're a very heavily trafficked office. Veterans, we stay busy, sending people over to medical appointments, doing the flags and markers. We just recently did a thing where we did care packages out to the recently deployed veterans, getting a whole bunch of snacks, treats. They're going to be clean when they come home. That's for sure. Lots of soaps. We've gone to the Grace Place, trying to see people when they're veterans and they are on the start of homelessness. We've been going there, trying to wrap some services around them and see what's out there for veteran side of the house. And we were doing some notification through the judges, asking them on initial appearance. They would ask if they're a veteran. We would then go in through CCAP, look through all of these different cases and whatnot, and if they said that they were a veteran, we would reach out to them, try to get them involved in those services and stuff. Unfortunately, we just kind of put a moratorium on that right now. Weren't getting a lot of wins, weren't getting a lot of victories. So we're going to be maybe working with Phil in the future. Maybe that's something that the navigator position could potentially do. But we were putting a lot of money, a lot of time, I should say, in doing that and not really getting the success and the wins that we were hoping for. We have over 5,200 veterans, and they bring in $33 million in compensation and pension dollars with themselves and their families. So when we do well and when the veterans are doing well, they're going to take that money and they're going to spend it in St. Croix County. Really want to also drive home one more time that the veteran service organizations that we have in St. Croix County are fantastic. If they are asking for a few dollars for poppies or doing anything along those lines, I encourage you to donate to them, because it goes towards good things in the community. They're always doing excellent things in the community. A lot of things under the radar that they do that are unknown. You know, the baseball and people asking for assistance and money, and that's because they're doing it on donations. That's it. Anybody got any questions? Thank you. Okay.
Thank you, Phil. All right, Beth, Register of Deeds.
Down to us. So I usually don't see you guys until August, so the 2024 report is brand spanking new. There's not a lot of new, Register of Deeds has no grants. We don't have anything that we can apply for. Brett can maybe apply for some land information stuff through his department, but not in our department really. We're a revenue producing department, so we always take in more money than we expend. 2024 was a pretty good year. We had revenues well above what we expected. Expenses, I kept them low. We kept our vacant position open all year. Now we filled that one, and then we have one retiring, and so the training is a big thing. So those are my big asks for 2026's budget, is to maintain full level of staffing finally. With the one retiring, it's a gap in knowledge in my office. So 2 people are pretty much just filling that one, so we'll kind of still be at this deficit. There's all kinds of new rules, new laws, everything, from judicial privacy, which will expand much beyond just judges. In the upcoming years, there's already an amendment to that bill out there, and it just took effect on April 1st. So staffing and then training, of course, to accommodate the new laws and things like that. Then the other big thing for our department is always, not necessarily through my department, but through IT mostly, maintaining just that good security and over data breaches, hacking, that type of stuff. That's always a big one for us, maintaining security of our data, because we keep it forever. Any questions? That's all I have. Thank you, guys.
Thank you, Beth. All right, Jason, community development.
All right, good morning, everybody. So, community development had a good year in 2024. Just hit some highlights here. One of the big things, we're getting kind of up with the times. We made all of our permits and soil tests available online. We updated 2 ordinances, finished up the comprehensive plan amendment, also completed the first phase of Highway 35 trail. And overall, with the budget, we ended up with a positive balance of $101,000. We actively pursued a lot of grants in 2024, and so we've got some grants that are multi-year grants and some years and that are spent within that same year. So our total grants for 2024 were around $4.1 million. That compared to about $1.7 million for 2023. Did a bunch of smaller park improvement, including improving some campsites, adding 12 new ones, updating some parking at Homestead, creating an ADA path down to the beach at Glen Lake. Land and water conservation had a really good year. Our tree and plant sale was up to almost 22,000 trees, up about 11%. And we had probably one of the highest years, if not the highest year, for installing BMPs across the county. We provided $414,000 worth of cost share, which was like 1.5 times what the budget was. And all that was covered by grant funding. So you can see here those new practices or those new BMPs greatly reduce the amount of phosphorus, nitrates, and also the amount of erosion on the landscape within the county. We also hit the highest amount of nutrient management plan acres in the county because we increased by 6,200 to almost 50,000 acres. Cover crops were down just because we didn't have a lot of cost sharing available for those crops. Recycling, we kind of switched up a bunch of our program there, basically provided a lot of free events. You can see some of the increases, 5 to 8 times than that what was done previously. Land use staff were also very busy in 2024. Sanitary permits were up to 382. They also took on state plan reviews to offer a one-stop shop for mounds and at-grades. So those are not shown in here, but there was 23 plan reviews completed. Land divisions, these are 4 lots or less, were up 29% from the previous year. Major plats were down though. Planning, we helped several different munis with their comprehensive plans. Also worked on NG 911 and improving the overall GIS parcel fabric. And we don't have any ask for the 2026 budget. Our GIS software costs, we've gotten information since this was done, and that's only going to be about 12 grand. So, and with that, so our department and our staff have done a fantastic job. You can see a lot of increase in output for the people of the county. Any questions?
Doesn't look like it. Thank you, Jason. They're either hungry, tired, or both. All right, next up we have UW Extension. Carrie.
Good morning, and thank you for having us. I think there's just a couple of highlights here. The first page of my document is the 2024 goals that we did achieve. That was reflective of the educators that we had in place at that time, to include a health and well-being educator and our ag educators, which then at the end of 2024, they vacated and transitioned elsewhere, which helped to bring us under budget. We turned money back to the county. And so as a result then, at committee, we made the decision to move in a different direction. We did not refill the ag positions, and instead we moved the health and well-being position into a human development and relationships educator. We are almost through the hiring process there. We've been working with HHS and Bob. He is a part of the hiring committee there and helped to create the job description. We hope to provide parenting education to their clients and also financial literacy programming through this individual. Additionally, and then, excuse me, we have also been working, and I appreciated the support from those other department leaders, our community development educators, also supporting HR with some trainings for staff, leadership training, management training, and so forth. And we're additionally looking for our educator there to further support other departments with technical assistance and or data analysis programming and or other trainings that they can utilize in their departments as well. So then therefore, the only thing that I'd probably draw other attention to is I've enjoyed the process working with the committee and with these local departments to create these positions and become more aligned. I'm hopeful to really be able to speak to more value added to the county. There is some concern, obviously, as far as federal grants, our entire FoodWise, and I should get back to this, sorry. This FoodWise grant dollar, which is essentially a percentage of 2 staff members, 53,000 is federal grant dollars via SNAP Ed. And that is, of course, in a state of uncertainty. We're unsure what will happen with that. And so that would be federal dollars that would not be seen in the county, and that would just be eliminated. This, of course, is not a contracted position here at the county, and so you would just lose those services. And the key for me is also here at UW, there has been concern and uncertainty. We're currently on what we're calling a hiring chill at this point, not a freeze. But in order to potentially offset what the chancellor has named either a 5% or 10% reduction, we're scrutinizing all of our hires and or other discretionary costs. And so therefore, we were able to move forward with the HDR position, and we're hiring that. But there's uncertainty about whether or not we would be able to hire in future if continued transitions happen with our personnel. The way that I'm looking to offset that is to continue to grow my partnerships here with the county. We are looking at offsetting some of the costs of our current contract via a state grant with the university. And then also just sort of speaking to, you know, how else we can provide more services and otherwise. Questions?
I will point out, I listed the 185,000 for UW Extension because, as you may recall, We'd originally cut the funding for UW Extension, and then the county board added funding back in, but they paid for it with fund balance. So it's not defaulted as part of our 2026 budget. You're going to have to add that in if you want to continue UW Extension into 2026.
Yes, Carrie, hi. I just wanted to share that the last time Carrie gave her annual report, I had a ooh-ah moment because I'm the chair of the Baldwin Woodville Community Education Advisory Board, and we've been stealing her to come over and give us tools and resources in expanding some of the programs that the Baldwin Woodville community has been asking for, and there's some gaps that are being filled there that, and I just wanted to share that as example of some of the expanded resources that are happening through the university extension and how it interplays with the mental health issues we have going on in so many of our departments and so many of our communities. And I'm pretty tickled to be moving forward with that. And I didn't know if, Carrie, you had anything beyond what I was sharing that you had?
No, I was just appreciative for that contact, and I've been reaching out with other school districts as well to see how that we can maybe further partner and look to grow those partnerships as well.
Ken, if that, I see no other questions for Carrie. Thank you, Carrie.
Thank you.
One, I'll just give my reaction to this morning. I think everybody had just tremendous presentations. We had lots of good questions. There was right on target, great written presentations, annual reports included in the budget presentation. And I was just going to suggest that we as a board give everybody a big hand for what they do for the county. With that, I'm going to say let's adjourn until 12:10. That gives us 30 minutes. Food is here, 12:10. And we'll start promptly at 12:10. Our task after that will be to address the issues that have been brought to us this morning and give guidance to the administrator on priorities. And we can do that at 12:10. So we're adjourned at this point until that time. Thank you. If everybody could take their seats, that would be great. We will reconvene. This is the portion of the committee meeting where we get to provide some guidance to our administrator based on what we've heard and what we've heard at various committees. I'm going to take just a moment to just recap something and give us some options on how to proceed. As we heard from the administrator, we're basically getting $1.2 million in new revenue. We're getting, if we gave a step increase to all our employees and we took care of the health insurance, it's $1.2 million. So in theory, everything could stop right there. We've heard some good presentations on some other things and some major issues have been raised. I'll just throw out a couple of those issues. We're basically running $1 million short in HHS as a result of the child placements we just talked about, because they can run up to $500,000 a year. We've got a couple of them now. And that's been the case for the last 2 years. So before that, we haven't had any placements like that, but we now have had a couple of years of $1 million deficits. We're also running about a $100,000 deficit in the clerk of court. And we heard about the issue there, particularly with interpreters, and that's only going to grow. So that's a big deficit that we're looking at that's there, and it's real, and it's not going away. We heard great presentations on personnel, and we might want to support all of the personnel changes if we had all the money in the world to do it. But from my perspective, at least, there was a good case made by Director Rohrt for splitting the position of Deputy Director and Behavioral Health Director, and that could have many downstream benefits. And I thought that the DA made a good case for somebody for diversion, and that has a lot of downstream benefits as well. But I stopped with 4 things beyond the step increase and the health insurance. So if I were to just suggest we just start out and simply say, to get that off the table, do we want to provide the administrator guidance on a step increase for all our employees and amounts to give or take 2.5%, which is a little less than inflation. We don't have money for more, realistically. And their health insurance, which is, again, we don't control, and there's a range there, but we've heard the range, and it all more or less balances out at $1.2 million if we take care of what we estimate the health insurance will be and a step increase. So I would just suggest that I'll put in front of the group that we agree that those are 2 things we're going to have to do, and that we give the administrator guidance on that, and then we focus on everything else. And I cited 4 things that might be the focus of our discussion, and because we really don't have any money if we address those 4 to go down to 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. And we have the rest of the year to see what grants come in, what additional taxes come in, what the legislative branch gives us in terms of various monies. And we do hope that there will be more monies, and I think we can expect that there'll be more monies, but we don't have them now. And so we can't thoughtfully expend those monies beyond pretty much what I think I just put on the table. So I'll just raise, is there any objection to a suggestion that we take care of one step increase for all our employees and their health insurance?
Can I make a comment?
Sure.
Yeah, I would agree with that, with at least start out with the step increase. And as far as the health insurance, I know that the last couple of years in the administration committee, we've done a nice job of looking at a variety of different options and trying to come up with something that's reasonable. And I would say that exercise would probably be worthwhile again, so that we would be able to make probably a reasonable and acceptable increase for employees, but try to limit that as much as possible. So I think that's very doable, given some options in the administration committee that we've done the last couple of years, and that's worked quite well.
I would agree that I would love to continue to do a step increase, but I think the reality is that if you add up the health insurance, the union contract, and what we need for children's services, because, if you do the quick math on that, there's 300,000 left on overages from that last year. That gives us about a $950,000 deficit, roughly. So if we start with a 1% COLA, we have 450,000 to put towards children's services. That's a more, I would love to do a step increase, but at the same time, we can't afford all of it. So if we start with a 1% COLA and see what monies we get, I think that's a more responsible way to start.
So how is our health insurance taken care of? Is it by a company or are we self-insured or how does this work?
St. Croix County is a self-insured health insurance plan. And so what happens is we have an actuary take a look at our previous history of plan cost, what current known medical issues are within the population group, and they project out a future cost for us then and what that cost breaks down to per single and family health insurance plan. So an actuary gives us a recommendation. We're able to not manipulate that, but adjust it by changing deductibles, co-pays, coverages. So we can alter the health plan. Since it is a self-insured plan, we have a lot more flexibility in making those alterations. And those alterations then affect what that health insurance premium looks like. So what we're talking about is the health insurance premium, and you set a target, and then I adjust the plan to get us to that target. And the target that Supervisor Fiedler was referring to from my PowerPoint presentation was a 2% increase in health insurance.
I've got a follow-up question on that.
There you go.
Okay. If a person doesn't take the insurance, do you have any incentive for them, you know, like a little higher pay per hour or whatever?
We do not, no.
Okay.
Oh, Supervisor Burning.
Thank you. So one thing, in thinking of this whole Spanish interpreter event, I'm going to assume, and I don't want to assume, so I'm going to ask, that do other counties have needs for Spanish interpreters? And if so, is it possible for us to look at moving this since I think, did someone say 100,000? The deficit?
Yeah, correct.
Yeah, so we have like $100,000 delta. What if we moved the budget for the contracted services over, took that money, hired a full-time person, and also contracted them out to surrounding counties? That way, we're able to offload the cost share of it.
I think you're going to need them here full-time.
And I was trying to do some research on that when you mentioned it before. I don't know if there's any type of conflict because these are typically interpreters for defendants. And so if there's any conflict in us employing an interpreter, but I think that's something obviously that Clerk of Court Christy Severson and I can look into further to see. I couldn't find, when I was looking on the Wisconsin State Court's website, any details about any counties that have an interpreter employed by the specific county. It talks a lot about the contracted services and what their training requirements are, but I couldn't find any counties currently. So I think Milwaukee might. Yeah,
Well,
but we can check.
the reason my logic goes down that path is because public defender's office are state employees, and it's the state of Wisconsin versus insert defender name, and then you got a public defender. So I mean, if that's a conflict of interest, then we've got a lot of conflicts of interest in that case. But I just think that that's something we should look at because I think that's. I mean, I don't know. I thought it was a good idea, but
Supervisor Anderson.
when do I not think?
I agree with Supervisor Bernie. I don't see how it'd be a conflict of interest. I mean, the clerk of courts employers are paid by us, and that's just like, like this, that would just be an administrative objective function. It's not anything that's up to interpretation or giving guidance or anything like that. It seems a pretty objective job that would be similar or like almost impossible for there to be a notion of a conflict of interest as long as I guess the person knows how to translate.
It's a novel idea. We just need to vet it first.
Yeah, absolutely. Yep.
Supervisor Leave.
And I think it's a good idea, but I will say it's not going to reduce the need for total interpretive services because we have other languages we're dealing with too. So I don't want us to think that that's going to completely solve the problem, but it should help us if we're able to do it.
Supervisor Connor.
The only concern I would have with it, and I agree with if we can do something like that, but does it push additional liability on us if we have an interpreter that makes errors or things? Do we have errors in emissions insurance, or how does that work to protect the county in that case if there was an issue?
Vice Chair,
Oh, I'm sorry. Supervisor Barklow.
could we look into some options for tech and AI that possibly could help solve that need?
No. The state court system has to approve it, and right now, only humans that are state certified are approved. They are not allowed to use AI or any type of tech for interpretive services currently. I agree, I think the state needs to make the change, but it has to happen from there.
Thank you.
I wonder if I could just turn the conversation back to the proposal I started out with the big parts here. And that's the step increase in health insurance. Supervisor Shirley had a slightly different version of it, and we don't have to lock it in, but if we took care of that just off the top, then we can get into pretty much those other four. I would say courts, clerk of courts, interpreter, diversion, the deputy director spot, and the $1 million delta we have with child placement. But so
I'd like to weigh in on that specific. Okay, so my thought, as much as I hate to disagree with Supervisor Shirley, I think given the fact that we have had very low turnover in the last year, and that's a lot of thanks to Audrey and the department heads, and the fact that we've kind of dialed in stabilization of benefits. I mean, there's a whole myriad of factors that have happened to keep this turnover low. I think it's imperative that we take care of those that have been here right now, and then we figure out like how can we work the rest either in, or are there areas that we, can move money from. So I would agree with the chairman in the fact that we need to take care of the step increases, keep a nominal increase to health insurance, and keep the stability of the organization intact, which everyone's done a really good job of. So that's my opinion.
maybe I could just add to
Could be
that,
wrong.
that with Supervisor Burning's opinion, and Supervisor Shirley's on the admin committee, and we don't have to say no at this point, but if we were to basically use one of those two approaches for Ken as we move forward and explore it more at the admin committee and get more details on how those options might work, we might have more data by then. Exactly, that's, so then we're not saying no to anything at this point, but we've narrowed it to those two anyway, and we can go forward. I think that's sufficient guidance to get going. And then we can begin to talk about these other four subjects, unless there's a fifth or sixth people like to raise. I just raised the ones that are huge. Did Supervisor Rice?
Yeah, I would just like to say, we're with a broad brush, we're starting the baseline. I agree with Supervisor Burning that we start with a bogey that we anticipate right now will keep up with inflation. The Fed is targeting 2%. We have a lot of unknowns. And I think the broader charge, I'd like to see us go with assuming the health insurance on a 2% step increase. But I think the broader charge for admin might have increased. And last year, we adopted a policy where we were assuming 100% of our anticipated sales revenue. And we just have a lot of uncertainty here. So I suspect that our staffing models, once we get to an approval, might have to become more sophisticated about when we decide to respond to a vacancy in our budget. So
I think we just decided to give that recommendation then to the administrator on both of those things. Do we want to take up with any more specificity those four other items that I mentioned? You get the $100,000 delta that we talked about with the interpreters, the $1 million with child placement, potentially splitting the position of deputy director and behavioral health director, and a diversion slot. If those are the four things we want to continue to give guidance on, we can do that. Otherwise, Chairman Long.
Yeah, well, I've learned in the past that the one expert in this room as far as prioritizing staff additions is this guy sitting right next to me here. The administrator, no, that's you. I think at this stage of the game, this is all very preliminary. I think he's going to have the best read in working with department heads on how to prioritize the positions that have been requested. And then at least that'll give us a starting point of, okay, what are they and what are they going to cost and where do we think we can come up with the money and what might work, what might not work. But I think I would suggest that would be the best starting point, at least to go by at this point in time.
Thank you, sir. You mentioned those 4 items. I think a 5th one should be the medical examiner's request for 2 full-time staff. What I'm afraid of is if we don't do that, we'll burn out the staff we have, and then they'll leave, and they'll even be shorthanded. And it's obvious that the amount of services needed, especially with our aging population, is getting more and more. So I would like that to be one of the priorities.
Try and Supervisor Rotino, and then we'll go to Supervisor Van Summer.
In an effort to expedite this, can't we just go over these one at a time and show of hands, say yes or no? I mean, we can debate this. We can debate all 5 items, just as a suggestion.
Yeah. We could do this. I think by way of what I was phrasing it was trying to get to that very point to limit, because there's some things we'll never get to with the amount of money we've got, so we could do just that, or we could just say we don't have nearly enough money to get to items 8, 9, and 10 at this point. I think if I'm right on what Supervisor Long was kind of saying, and maybe what a couple other voices have been, if we've limited it to the 5 items that are now on the table, what Supervisor Carlson said, plus the other 4, and more or less say yes to our administrator, those are the 5 things that we really think we need to focus on. If we get more money, great, but we're going to have to struggle to fill those 5. And then, the admin committee can dive into this big time over the next couple of months, come back to us with more detail and justifications. But is there really any point in going beyond those 5, I guess is the question. Supervisor Leaf, did you have your hand up?
Yeah, I agree with you, Chair Fiedler. The other thing I was going to say is I know you put a screen up earlier about the process, but this is just the beginning. So it's not like we can't make amendments to this or changes or whatever. But Ken, what is the next step then after the priorities are identified? Or I could read the slide.
No, specifically for priorities, you're going to give me something to work with today. And I'm going to take that, create a resolution, put it on the admin agenda for April 15th. Admin then will make any adjustments that they seem fit after they've had a couple weeks to sleep on it. They'll send it to the May County Board, and hopefully at that time, the County Board makes any of their final adjustments, they approve it, so I can use it with staff to start the budget process with them.
Just to clarify, if I can, those are just the priorities. So we're not getting specific or into a lot of detail. It's just basically here are our budget priorities, top to bottom, and then that gives us, Ken and the staff, the starting point to start working on the budget.
I think any other comments? But I think we've relatively gotten to consensus on how to, Supervisor Van Summer.
Thank you. Just a couple of things. One thing, we're looking at, and I believe someone mentioned adding the 2 full-time investigators. I look at some of this as a want list, and I would say let's go 1. Let's cut that in half, go to 1. There's a movement in our nation to cut back, to cut positions, to work more lean, and I think that's being accepted by a lot of people. And I think we have to be sensitive to that too at the county level, not only at the state and the federal level, but county level too. So just keep that in mind as you meet and as you talk about adding more of this or adding more of that or spending more of that. The people in our county are looking probably for us to follow suit to the other legislative parties. Thank you.
I think we can all agree on that, that's for sure. Any other comments on any other specific guidance in addition to the specific comments that have been made that we can give to the administrator to prepare for the next admin committee meeting for? Can you repeat the 5 that you said we're going to send for him to like siphon through? Yeah, I believe the 5 we've talked about are the DA's diversion position, the HHS splitting the deputy director and the behavioral health director position. We've recognized there's a $100,000 deficit in the clerk of court we have to address, and that's for the interpreter issue for the most part. And we've got the HHS out-of-home placement costs that are unexpected, which for the last couple of years have run $1 million deficits. And next year it could be 0, but it could be another $1 million deficit if that becomes the norm. And Supervisor Carlson raised that we should consider the medical examiner's office's request for some degree of increase as well. I think that captured it. Plus, of course, the first part dealing with the step increase and the health insurance, or a modification of that Supervisor Shirley was going to further amplify on at the admin committee meeting. If there's more or less consensus, I think. Oh, I'm sorry. Absolutely.
I've got just one more question on University Extension. It's got that 185,000 in parentheses. So does that mean that that's not going to be in their budget, or is that going to be part of that budget?
Their budget for 2026 starts at 0 because you use fund balance to fund it. So if you don't put 185 out of new money to that, there won't be a UW extension for the positions that that's funding.
Okay. Thank you.
Any other comments or suggestions? Supervisor Ramberg.
So would that, could that be one of the priorities that we list, even though it's not on the top?
Well, it certainly can be. I think anything we kind of suggest now, Ken will take into consideration, and we'll have to sort it out both at committee and again as a full board when we have more data and can put a priority on it. Again, hopefully we'll get more monies in as the year progresses. And I think I commented earlier that just in the judiciary element, for example, and the clerk of court mentioned this, we could expect upwards of $500,000 in an increase if the state legislature adopts the WCA request. And that would take care of a lot of issues right there. But we don't have it in hand. And the state is, it's uncertain, as Supervisor Telejohn said earlier, what they're going to be doing with their budget on so many areas that we just can't count on that money right now. So we could add that in, I think, Ken, to the suggestions that we look at carefully at admin. Are there any other suggestions? If not, I think we've completed our business of providing guidance to the administrator today. And
just to ask quickly, do you feel like you have enough guidance to start the process at least and establish some priorities for us to look at?
Yes.
Okay.
That's all I want to know.
So we've completed the business item of the agenda, and we have requests for future agenda items. Hearing none at this point, we'll have any announcements. And the date of the next meeting will be to be determined, but it'll be sometime this summer. Thank you all for all your comments and graciousness today. Meeting's adjourned.